Welcome to another episode of Search News You Can Use with me, Dr. Marie Haynes. I'm recording this on July 5th, 2018. We're a couple days late this week. That's a combination of holidays, so happy Independence Day to the Americans, happy Canada Day to all my fellow Canadians. And also, I've been traveling. So I was traveling to Finland with the SEMrush crew. They put on a fantastic event where they wined and dined us, fed us a lot of reindeer. I got to play the drums with a live band, which was pretty cool, and learned a lot of stuff too. And then in return, we gave a lot of good feedback on SEMrush products. Just as a funny point, I have always been torn as to whether to call it SEMrush or I usually call it SEMrush. And even their own staff, half of them seem to call it one and half call it the other. And so then when the CEO stood up, he called it SEMrush. So from now on, that's what I'm calling it. So let's get right into the newsletter. I'm going to do something a little bit different this time. I'm actually going to walk you through the paid version of my newsletter. We're not going to cover everything in the paid version because that wouldn't be fair to the people who are paying for the newsletter. But there are a few things in there that I really wanted to point out, and then we'll give you a little bit of taste of what you can get if you would like the paid version. You can reach my newsletter at mariehaynes.com/newsletter. It'll also be in the description below this video. So let's get going to screen sharing here. And we'll talk about the latest changes. So first thing is that there really haven't been any significant algorithm updates in the last week. It's not that uncommon for Google to have quiet periods in the summer. I know Barry Schwartz posted something where he said he's heard some rumors of a very large algorithm update coming. I think that may possibly be the speed update, which Google has said is going to be happening in July. So that might be what he's talking about. It may also be, I think we're going to see some fallout from mobile first indexing. We're not supposed to because Google is trying to move sites over to mobile first indexing only when they're ready to be moved. And a lot of people who got this email here, there was a big wave of emails that Google sent out just a couple of days ago. Now, if you didn't get one, it doesn't mean that there's something wrong with your site or that you're not necessarily mobile first indexing ready. Rather, the sites that got this email, all the ones I had a bunch that were sites that I created like even as much as 10 years ago. And these are sites that definitely are not mobile friendly. But the thing is, they're because they don't actually have a mobile version, they're exactly the same in terms of content on desktop as mobile. Now, Google has said that if you're a responsive site, that you don't need to worry about mobile first indexing. It won't hurt you. And I don't think that's true. So one of my sites that I received this email for was a site that actually is responsive. So responsive means that the content's the same, but as the viewport changes, so if somebody watches it on a phone, perhaps, if they're looking at it, that just the way that the content is laid out will change according to the size that it's being seen on. However, some responsive sites will have a different code for the navigation on mobile as on desktop. And this particular site that I have is missing some nav links to some very important pages on mobile. This is an oversight of mine. It's more a matter of just having too many client things to do, and I haven't been able to update my own site. But here's the interesting thing. This site, coincidental with getting moved to mobile first indexing, saw a significant drop in organic rankings, but only for some terms. And what's interesting, though, is that it's a local site, and they actually saw a bump up to #1 for their most important local keyword. I don't really know how to tie that in to the mobile first indexing change. I don't know. Maybe there are some things that are described better on the mobile version of the site. I'll have to look into that. But my point is that I do think that the organic drops I saw were due to this nav change. So even though this is an important site for me, I'm actually going to keep this live and not change it for a couple of weeks and just see what happens with the rankings. And then I'm going to add those links into the navigation on mobile and see if we see some improvements. One thing I would really urge you to do is if you do get that notification for mobile first indexing, that you make a notation in Google Analytics. That makes things way easier if you're trying to diagnose a traffic drop or any sort of issue with traffic in the future. So you can look back, because not everybody received their move to mobile first indexing on the same day. So this will be easy for you to remember that that has happened. And really, anytime you make any change that has the ability to affect your organic traffic, you should be making an annotation in Search Console for that. The new Search Console URL tool has rolled out, and this is pretty neat. You can look at so you can inspect a URL, and then it'll tell you whether it's on Google, whether it's indexed, and also what they think the canonical is. And so I have one page. I thought this was very interesting. I have one page on my one of my sites that I have purposely canonicalized to another domain. It's a cross-domain canonicalization. And the reason I did that is that this site actually owns the content, but it makes sense for this other site to have it. But here's the interesting thing: is that this this URL, which is on my website, really doesn't need to be in my sitemap. So that was a neat thing that I'll go in and change that. And so there are other things in there. I'm still playing around with it, but I think that that we can learn quite a bit from using this URL information tool. Let's talk a little bit about page speed update. So John Mueller has said that this update is going to happen in July. At least they're saying that they're aiming for July, which who knows, it may take longer. There was something he said in a help hangout that sort of implied that the page speed update was incremental even for fast sites, but this is not true. So now it's still a good idea to make your site load as quickly as you can. However, if you're looking for an algorithmic boost or trying to avoid an algorithmic hit, really you only need to worry if your site is seen as slow by Google's Page Speed Insights tool. What we've been telling people is if you are in the red for the optimization tool score in page speed, then you might worry about being affected by this update. So what John has said is that this is only going to affect very slow sites. And so if you are reasonably fast, he said tweaking won't change things. But the interesting thing is that if you are slow, the effect is incremental, meaning, as far as I understand, that if you are a very, very slow site, then you may be demoted a lot. If you are just moderately slow and just barely in the red, then you might not be demoted so much. Now, I know when this comes out, people will say, oh, look at this site. It's ranking #1 and it's so slow. And the thing is, this is only just one of the factors. So if you still are the absolute best answer for a searcher's query, you can still rank well with a slow site. But I would urge you to do everything you can to improve on page speed. Interesting thing about press release links. This is not new news. Matt Cutts has said this years ago that Google does not count press release links. So I would urge you not to use press release links as a link building strategy. I'm still a fan of doing these types of links doing press releases if it makes sense for your business. So if you're doing something absolutely amazing with your business and you have a press release that journalists will actually pick up and journalists will want to write about your company, then keep doing it. But if you're doing press releases just for the links, then that's probably not a good idea. I'll just talk briefly about this. There was an article about a well-known person in the SEO industry who was caught writing for Forbes and linking out to his clients. And what's interesting here is that he was in the section of Forbes that's kind of like the trusted section of Forbes. And Forbes, when they got word of this, they moved him to the guest contributor section. And so Google has said for a while now that they know which parts of Forbes to trust. They know which links to count. And so the reason why I put this in my newsletter, and I didn't link to the article just because I'm not a fan of outing people. I'm sure if you really want to find it, though, you can do some Googling and you can find it. But I think it's really important to comment on these bullet points here, in that I see it all the time that businesses are paying SEO companies to basically do glorified article marketing, and so I don't care whether the articles are on even on authoritative websites. If you're getting links that nobody's clicking on, and it's not actually promoting your brand, then these are links that are against Google's guidelines, especially if you're doing them on a big scale. And I have seen a large number of sites that have been paying for this kind of SEO for years and have not seen any movement in the last couple of years. So I would urge you, I do think links are still important, but it's the links that come because your company is so awesome that people want to write about it, or that you've written content that like doesn't exist anywhere, and people want to reference it. Those are the links that move the needle. We're not going to talk about everything in here, otherwise this would be an extremely long video. So you can find all this at mariehaynes.com/newsletter. I thought this was interesting. I am seeing this too, where you search for something, and then the results are really not even related to what you're searching for. But if I say, it must include events, then I get some even better search results. I don't think that there's anything as SEOs we need to be doing about that, but it's still an interesting thing. Some AMP news. If you do AMP, you may want to check the newsletter out for that. Let's see what else we'll talk about here. This was interesting. Auto-translated content. So I'm talking about if you want to translate your website into another language, is it okay to just take Google's translation and put that up on your website? And John Mueller said if you do that, you cannot have it in Google's index. The Google Quality Raters guidelines talk about, so John has said that auto-translated content is considered auto-generated content, and the Quality Raters guidelines say that that type of content should be given the lowest rating. So if you want to translate content on your website, ideally you should get human translators to do that. There are all sorts of tools that will connect you with human translators to translate your content. Or you can have content on your website that's translated but not indexed. And what John suggested was perhaps using JavaScript to allow users to say, yes, I would like this content in German or whatever. And so you don't want put these auto-translated pages in the index. Let's see what else here. Google Data Studio, which looks amazing, and I'm embarrassed to say I have not gotten into this, but I think that I should. Now has 16 months of data, which is fantastic. This, to me, was the most interesting part of the newsletter. And it fascinates me. I'm sure you've heard the story of the Red Hen restaurant in Lexington. And I'm not going to get into the politics, but there was some very negative press about this restaurant. And so first thing I think of when I see somebody in the press is, oh, wow, they must be benefiting from the links that came from that. So take a look at the links this is Ahrefs showing the referring domains to this website. So you can see when the actual news broke. I mean, there's a large number of, looks like they've got, from about 350 new domains linking to them. That's an insane amount of links. So surely that must have helped their rankings, right? And so I just realized I do not have my Ahrefs graph in here, but this is from SEMrush, and you can see organic traffic really has not improved. If anything, it's actually declined. And Ahrefs was the same. It sort of showed that organic traffic just stayed the same. So I have a number of theories as to what happened here, and you can read that in the newsletter. But I think the main point here is that Google knows which links to count. I don't know if now there's some other issues. This site was hacked, and so maybe maybe Google is not trusting it so much. But somehow they seem to know that these links, even though they came from authoritative press sites and they're mostly followed links, they did not actually help the site's rankings. So again, I think Google's recognizing which types of links are there because somebody's actually recommending a website and which ones are not recommendations. And so I think they're ignoring most of those links. Congrats to ConvertKit, who has changed their name to Seva. And ConvertKit is really, really a fantastic company. So I really wish you the best with your transition to your new brand name. Looks like ConvertKit's adding a bunch of new features as well, which is pretty cool. This was really neat. we had a site that we were reviewing and it was in a different language. And so when that happens, what we'll do is we'll use Google's, the thing pops up that says, do you want to translate this site? And so that really helps us. This one site, we weren't getting that pop up. And so I tweeted about it and I got some really good responses. One person said that, perhaps the API sometimes has difficulty with translating certain websites. Another said you can actually include a no translate tag, which was not the case for this website. And then Simon Cox said, check the HTML language, not the href lang, but he said HTML language equals EN. If that's there, then the part of Chrome that does the translation will think that the page is in English, and surely that was the case. So we saw that it said HTML lang equals EN, and then I just found out this is not actually in the newsletter yet, but I just found out that actually the site now is we switched it over to the appropriate language, and when we go there, we get the ability to translate it. So if users are not able to translate your site, it might be that, and this often comes because whoever did the code for this website probably just copied and pasted the code from a template. And so you want to make sure that if it does say HTML language, that it's appropriate. Otherwise, people won't be able to translate the site some people won't be able to translate the site into their language. I wanted to mention this workshop that we are doing in Ottawa. So if you're anywhere near the Ottawa region, it's August 10th, and we're going to be talking. It's myself, Joy Hawkins, Marcella DeVivo, and we're going to talk all about quality. So I'm going to talk about the Quality Raters guidelines. Joy is talking about reviews and the importance of reviews and how to get good reviews. And then Marcella is going to give us some good technical tips for improving the technical quality of our website. So this is a one-day conference. There's a very minimal cost just so we can ensure that people who sign up actually show up. And I'm really looking forward to it. So if you want more information on that, then it's in the newsletter, or just let me know and we'll get you in. So a few local things. Somebody asked whether you can embed your Google reviews on your site. And the answer from Google My Business is yes, you can. So that's good to know. Let's see here. If you have competitors with very spammy Google My Business names, sometimes getting those removed can be challenging. And so what one person had suggested was to actually do a partial edit, and that will often get changes made. So that's a good thing to know for those of you who are doing local SEO. And I think that's about all that we have for this month. So let me stop sharing my screen here. And okay, great. So hopefully you've enjoyed that. I wanted to tell you guys as well that I do have a podcast that has all of the same information, although I record the podcast separately. It's not just the audio from this video. And so you can find that under search news you can use, or you can just look for my name on iTunes or on Google Play or any of the places where you get a podcast. If you're looking for a site review, if you are having problems with the quality on your website, then you can contact me at marie@mariehaynes.com. And I wish you the best of luck with your rankings this week. And hopefully we have some good news to report on next week.